Okay, part one of our guided landscape painting. So we can learn how to create different values with our watercolors by adjusting the amount of water to paint ratio. And we're going to try out the wet on wet technique to make a nighttime galaxy. So the first thing you're going to do is work on your value landscape. We're going to start by mixing that lightest value and painting the whole paper. Okay, this is the nighttime galaxy painting that we'll be working on afterwards with the wet on wet technique. Okay, begin by finding like the halfway point of your one paper. Make sure your paper is taped down on all sides, by the way. And the halfway point, and then just above the halfway point, you're going to make like the kind of the top horizon line of your painting. Think of like the ridge of the mountains in the distance. Then, with your palette, all right, found my palette. I'm going to make sure my brush is clean first. Dirty water, dip, swirl, wipe, blot, get my brush clean, then get some clean water and put some clean water in one of these sections of your palette. Make a little puddle there. Ooh, I forgot to activate my paints. I need to put a little drop of water in each of my colors to activate my paints first before I get started. And really only the colors that you think you're gonna need, you're gonna be using. We're not using all of them. For the value landscape, we're just gonna use one color. I'm gonna use the purple. So I'm gonna tickle my purple just lightly. And to show you how I did that, it's a little bit off the screen. Just lightly, I'm gonna touch my brush to it. I'm not digging around, I'm not pressing down hard, I'm just lightly touching it. And then I can wipe and get it into my puddle. Swirl it around. Now I can test it out and see if that is a good, excuse me, good color for my landscape. I think I want a little bit more value in there, so I'm going to just put a little bit more paint in there. Notice how much paint I have. Don't want to run out of paint midway. Okay, that looks pretty good. Testing it out on my paper, I think that's going to be a good value. You want this to be a very light value. And you're going to go right across the top of your ridgeline. When we talk about value, by the way, we're talking about how light or dark a color or shade of gray is, going from the lightest to the darkest. Now when you put your paint down, you want to go right across horizontally along that pencil line, and then you want to put the next stroke of paint right underneath that one, so it kind of carries the paint down with it. Notice how I'm going all the way across nice and smooth. This is called a wash of color. You want it to be a nice, even, smooth wash of color. If I keep going over it in different areas, I will actually put more paint down and it'll be darker. So I want to be able to just kind of go all the way across with one stroke as much as I can, and then carry it all the way across. So I have pretty even value all the way across. Now I'm going to let that dry, wash my brush off. When I'm done with that, put it down on the paper towel. I'm going to move on to my next, my nighttime galaxy. Move my paper up here. And for the nighttime galaxy, I'm going to be using more colors. Make sure you can see both of my water cups here. And this is a wet on wet technique. So I'm going to start with my warm colors. Let me turn this so you can see my warm colors actually. Warm colors are like, think of the colors of fire, like red, orange, yellow, colors of the sun. But because it's a wet on wet landscape, I'm going to wet my paper first. I'm going to see how paint just kind of flows together. I don't want puddles, I want a nice even wetness on my paper. So painting just with the water to create a nice wet surface, evenly wet surface. If I see any puddles, I want to kind of spread that out. I don't want any areas wetter than other areas, if I can help it. Okay, once you have that wet, then you can start with your first color at the bottom. I'm going to tickle my color, just lightly touch it, and I'm just going to put my first color down, and notice how it starts spreading and going upwards. That is what happens with wet on wet. It's kind of a cool thing that watercolor does that nothing else really does quite the same. I'm going to put my next warm color down there and add to it some orange, and then I'm going to add some yellow, but I don't want to put it like, I'm going to kind of let it flow into those other colors. Let them to flow and run together. Okay, now I'm going to move up to the top and create my nighttime galaxy. I'm just going to put down some blue. I want the blue to kind of be at the middle ground, so kind of the middle of my paper, just below the middle. Put my blue all the way across there. Then add in maybe some purple, because it's not daytime. I want it to look like a nighttime sky, so I'm going to add some darker values. I'm going to get some blotting my brush now and getting some of that darker purple to put on there, just the purple. I'll get some, need to get clean water on my brush when I get my color. Dip, swirl, wipe. There's my purple. That other one was blue purple. My brush needs to be clean, so dipped in the dirty first. Tickle, 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 tickle the paint, and get my purple on here. Purple's taking a longer time to activate, so just gotta tickle it a little bit more. Get some more purple on my brush and add that in. I don't want to overdo it. I want it to just kind of run and do its thing. Let it spread out. Get some more blue on there to mix with my purple. Make it darker, a darker value. Okay. Now, I think I'm ready to add my black. Tickle my black paint. I'm going to put my black going across the top and coming down my sides a little bit. Maybe I'll put some clouds in here using the side of my brush. And again, you don't want to overdo it with your brush. You want the paint to kind of flow and do its thing on its own. With this, the water, a lot of the water is already on your paper. So you don't need to have a ton of water on your brush, just enough to get that pigment to come off onto your brush. Okay, once you've got that done, and wash your brush off. Actually want to add a little more blue back in because that black is kind of taken over. If you end up with too much paint, too much water, you can get your brush nice and clean and blot it to get it dry, and then you can just kind of put it down and kind of lift it up a little bit, and you'll soak up some of that paint. All right. That gives me a space I can put in a little bit more of my blue and a little more of my purple that I want to get more color in there, not just have my black. Okay, now I'm going to leave it and let it do its thing. Carry it up to the drying rack. Step 1 is done.